Alright, this week we're covering Chapter 2, which is working with functions, data types, and operators. After this chapter, you should be able to write and call functions to perform actions and calculate values, associate functions with events using event handlers and event listeners, use built-in JavaScript functions, understand the scope of variables and functions, as well as understand data types supported by JavaScript, writing expressions with numeric values, text strings, and Boolean values, creating expressions using arithmetic or math, assignment, logical, string, and special operators, understanding order precedence, associativity of operations, working with events and values associated with form controls, and how to access the debugging console in the browser. What is a function? It's a programming structure of a collection of statements sharing a common purpose or to calculate a value. So for example, the syntax here is function name with parameters in parentheses, open and close curly Q brackets, and any statements inside that work for that. An anonymous function is one that is not named. That's the only difference between the two. The parameters are the variables it uses, and the curly braces here are the command block. So for example, we're looking at the total photography charge here for the fan trick fine art photography. We see here it's listed as $2,330, and we check our services here how to determine that cost. So what will be happening as you work through this chapter exercise, once you add in the numbers here, then 1 through 4, number of hours, memory book or not, and travel, these will all get added and or multiplied to get your total estimate over here. And here is our function. We're calling it setup form. Set the photographer's default to 1. The number of hours worked default to 2. Whether or not the 2 checkboxes are selected, we're setting those to false, and our default travel to 0. And we see here we are going document.getElement by ID, photo num, photo hours, make book, photo rights, and photo dist. Remember, these IDs have to be specific to certain HTML elements. An ID is unique. Classes are generic. The JavaScript expression for calling a function name, and param values. So the param values are those that are actually called into the argument. So here we have function name, parameters, some statement, and then return value. Returning is what happens at the end of this function. It will end the execution and return whatever that value is. Event handlers in the actual HTML, you would use element on event equals function. Using them for object properties is within the JavaScript file, which is the way we will be doing so. And we will use object.onEvent equals something. A function can handle only a single event at a time. Event listeners are those that listen for events as it goes through a web page, which is either the capture or bubbling phases. You can attach multiple functions to a single event in this case. Object.add event listener. Add event listener is one we'll be using a lot too. Event, function, and capture. Events and anonymous functions, they include the entire structure for a function in place of a function name in the event handler or listener. And you can pass in parameter values through this approach. So here you see we have the window.add event listener. We are looking for the load event, in which case we will then run the function setup form. So when the page is loaded, it will then populate all of these form fields as we have requested right here. These are some of the built-in JavaScript functions. You have decode URI component, encoding as well, eval, is finite or is not a number, parsing a float, and parsing an integer. For example, we have a function here to determine if this is a social security number. Let social security number equal some number, following the social security number field with the dashes inside. So we can do check var, is social security number a number or not. If we do document.write check var, it will then return whether or not this is a number. The variable scope is a function called within a program. So let block scoped, using only in the command block. Variable var are function scoped, limited to the function. However, anything that's outside of the block are accessible throughout the program. Make sure you are using let at all times. Variables, var, is limited to the function, however, is not the proper way to do so. Do not use var, use let. And the difference between local and variable scope are where they are accessible. Anything with a global variable signed outside of a function are accessible throughout the entire program. That will be either your let or your const done outside of any functions, but within the same JavaScript file. Local and global variables can have the same name but different values. If you use local variables, they take precedence in scope. Assigning values with the local variables does not affect global variable values unless you're using the var command. Global variables are useful for small applications or for constants, and local variables are preferable for anything used and changed within a specific function. So for example here, we are setting constants. Our employee cost, book cost, repo cost, and travel costs are all going to be fixed values of $100, $350, $1,250, and $2 per mile. We have set those, and then we have told it to run those forms, and then we create our syntax for calling that function. So we have here, let quantity per box equal 12. Function, describe candy. Project name, comma, number of boxes. Data types, specific categories, or primitive types. Data types can only be assigned to a single value. Data types are numbers, booleans, strings, undefined, or null empty values. Strongly typed programming languages require you to declare the type of data a variable contains and do not allow you to alter that type. Loosely typed or dynamically typed programming languages do not require it. Hello world, div types equals 8, div types equals 5.367, etc. We want to make sure that we set these when we create them using let or const. Numeric values can be either integers or floating point with scientific notation. Boolean values are either true or false. Strings can be 0 with nothing in them, an empty string, or they can have things inside of them. You can use quotation marks within strings in whichever order you prefer. You see here we've got double quote and then single quote, double quote, or single quote, double quote, single quote. The first one will show fan trick photography in a single quote. The second one will show fan trick photography in a double quote. Concatenation, you saw that briefly last chapter, using 2 or more strings together. You can also use the template literal, enclosing strings in backtick characters. An escape character is something that is placed to indicate they're treated as a regular keyboard character, but not a syntax. So you would use a slash in whatever that character is to carry for that purpose. An escape sequence is an escape character followed by a specific character for a specific special function. So for example, if you wanted to do the backslash, you would do double slash. A new line, form feed, these are all ways that you would want to add these in. JavaScript operators are binary and unary. Binaries are operands before or after the operator. Arithmetic operators perform mathematical operations. So for example here, we see the plus is plus 12 plus 3 equals 15. 12 minus 3 would equal 9. 12 times 3 equals 36. 12 divided by 3 is 4. A remainder or modulus, remainder of 3. Raising is the double star, so 3 squared comes out to 9. Unaries are single operands, so if you did 12 plus plus, that means increment by 1. 12 minus minus is decrement by 1, and then negative would change the value of the sign. The difference here is where this happens. You could also do plus plus 12, meaning that before it goes to 13, it would do 13 and then run whatever it is doing. Negative negative would be first change to 11 and then run the function. So let x equals 5, y equals plus plus x would make that x equals 6 and y equals 6. Postfix operator is after. X is 5, so if you set y to x, it would then say x is 5, and then we increment x by 1. Then you have assignment operators, see equal sign, plus or equal, minus or equal, multiply or equal, divide or equal, modulus or equal, and squared or equal. These can be helpful for shortcutting, but it's best at first to get to know the actual operator methods using longhand. And then you have comparison operators. Double equal means is this value equal to x? So this would be, say, 5 versus 5.0. That would return yes. For a triple equal, if you had 5 and 5.0, the answer would be false, because 5 is an integer, 5.0 is a float. Not equal is either not the same or different data type. Double not equal, not the same and or not the same data type. Greater than or equal, less than and less than or equal. Conditional, you can either say if this, do this, or else do this. Falsy is an empty string, non, null, anything like that. Truthies and falsies can make comparisons more compact by remitting the comparison operator. Then you have your logicals, and, or, and not. or not. So and is if x is equal to 5 as a string, and y is equal to 8 as a string. If this was true, and this was true, this would return true. If x is equal to 5, or y is equal to 5, then this would return true. And the not here means that if x is less than 5, then if that is true, then it would return the opposite of that. Property access is either the dot, array index is a brackets, function calls, parentheses, commas, separating expressions, conditional expressions, and deleting arrays. You can determine if a property exists using in, determine the object type using instance of, creating a new object with new, determining the data type by using type of, and evaluating expression without returning a result using void. Operator precedence is simple PEMDAS you should remember from elementary and middle school math. Associativity determines precedence with equal intrinsic precedence. So for example here, 5 plus 2 times 8, PEMDAS means that multiplication happens first, so 2 times 8 is 16 plus 5. In this case, precedence for equal intrinsic means that whatever is first happens first. So 30 divided by 5 is 6, and then 6 times 2 is 12, as opposed to multiplying 5 times 2 to be 10 and dividing that by 30. If you wanted that, you would have to put 5 times 2 into parentheses. And in our case here, remember that we have let x equal 3, let y equal 2. We are saying x equals y, multiply equal plus plus x, which would then evaluate and create x and y equaling 8. And here, as I said, parentheses, first we have to add 5 plus 2 to 7, and then 7 times 8 to 56. So this is the left to right associativity, which is why we had to do 30 divided by 5 equaling 6, and then multiplying by 2. And here we have associativity right to left. First we increment, and then we multiply x by y, and then we set x to that. In our case here, we're setting our initial estimate to 0 because we will be using these values here to multiply out. So our total cost is photographers times hours times employee cost. And then we add in our total cost of photographers times distance times travel cost. And you see here we're doing the plus equal. So we've got total cost of 0. So total cost here, we multiply these together. So let's assume these were 12, 1, and 2. So one employee at 2 hours times 12 is 24. So our total cost right now is 24, which means that our total cost then is plus equal, which means we will be adding 24 to this number. So let's say it is 50 cents per mile. We traveled 10 miles for one photographer. 1 times 10 is 10, and then 10 times 0.5 is 5. So then we would add 24 to 5 and get 29. And this is how we estimate out these numbers. Photographers, we add in the total value, we add in the hours, we add in the distance, and we add in our book, whether or not they're paying for the rights in the book. And then we add in again one more time, whether or not they wanted to buy the book or pay for the rights. And if that is the case, we add in that total to our total that we had before. And here is how that script looks in full. Our getEstimate function, initially set to 0. We set this to whatever value is in our web page and whether or not these are checked. And then we go through and say, okay, how many employees and how long were they there? And we make that our total cost. And then we say, okay, how long were those photographers traveling? We add that to that total cost. Did they buy a book? Yes. Okay, then add the value of the book. Did they buy the rights? No? Okay, then we'll add that. And then at our estimate section, we will then show that total cost in that area on the web page, which we showed earlier was that $2,350. And running that will run that function of getEstimate. The getEstimate function will then add these in, and then we will get our value added into our text. On the browser console, you can see any errors from there. The browser console will show you lines where errors happened and report lines that failed to run and allow you to see where you have to make code corrections. As an example here, we use total cost lowercase, not total cost with camel text, which is the issue that we had. In summary, we have shown how to write and call functions, associate functions with event handlers and listeners, use the built-ins functions, understanding functions, variables, and scope, using numeric values to text strings and Boolean values, using expressions with arithmetic, assignment, comparison, logical, string, and special operators, understanding precedence and associativity of operations, working with events and values associated with form controls, accessing your browser's debug console. Thank you for listening and have a good rest of your week.